Gotta fix my volume. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our May customer office hours. We are gonna pause just a bit while folks trickle into the webinar, and then we will go ahead and get started. Okay, I see people. Good. All right, we're gonna get started. Hi, Tyler. Welcome. This topic is Inside Targets, a practical look at Fullcast quota framework. Super excited. Targets have been just continually developing and improving and getting impressive more and more over the last more than a year, I feel like. So it's an exciting update and a refresh for everybody on this topic.
Yes, I'm very excited to show. I think we're going to really start from scratch today.
Yeah.
I was closing some windows to make sure that this thing is high performance, but um, I think we're going to start from scratch. We're going to go through all the different scenarios that we've really been focused on over the last year, enabling for our customers and kind of some of the choices we've made. And we'll touch on all the new functionality, new features, and we'll kind of go from there. I think questions are very much welcome, and I'm excited. So I'll pivot it back to you, Ashley.
Awesome. So just a few pieces of housekeeping as well as some slides to orient us, like Tyler was mentioning. So quick introductions. I'm Ashley, customer education. He's Tyler, director of product.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
as Tyler was mentioning about the format, we have some amount of slides. I like to kind of provide some context for people who may be new to this topic, understanding that some folks are in the process of implementing targets, some people already have targets, and other people are just kind of trying to explore what's possible. So we wanted to provide some background context for everybody. So we have some amount of slides, and then a lot of it, though, is going to be Tyler doing demos. We'll keep an eye on the Q&A throughout. So please feel free to ask questions at any point in time. We'll pause and take them as they come or do it at the end as well. 1 minute feedback survey. Actually, when the webinar ends, you'll get prompted for feedback. And if you have a chance, it's great to share that. And then we will share the recording, the deck, and a summary article of today's topics tomorrow via email. So that's the format there. In terms of the slides that we'll go over briefly, one quick slide about the targets framework, how these pieces between territories, teams, and targets work together. Then an overview of what you need to have in place in order to begin. And I know I received a question about this in advance from the registration survey, people trying to kind of understand, like, are there any hard requirements of what I have to have in place either in Fullcast or in Salesforce in order for this to work correctly? So we want to make sure we cover that. And then the bulk of the session will be spent on number 4, the scenario walkthroughs, where Tyler's got built out things in a demo environment that he'll show to not just showcase the functionality, but we really want to ground everything in a real world scenario about how this is designed and meant to be used to help you guys manage your targets. And then some next steps if you want to get started learning more about this, considering implementing it or moving forward in your own organization, and then Q&A, just saying that one again.
Yeah, cool. The
Sweet.
targets
Yeah.
is connected. Okay. All right. So I think this is my show now, right? I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
over. Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Step one, foundation, right? Territories versus teams. This is kind of the beginning piece of I think I might want to set targets in Fullcast. And commonly you'll hear me, by the way, in this call it quota or targets. We've specifically called it targets because the targets module is built to be much more than just quota. I know everybody in our RevOps world, we always call it quota because that is what we directly measure against the reps as they sell. But targets can be really anything, and we have scalar targets that could measure, pipeline coverage. Am I meeting a pipeline coverage target? Am I meeting a pipeline velocity target? Um, Call volumes, all of the different targets that you might be wanting to track. That's really how we've thought about this whole thing and designed it. But just know that I think the most common use case that we see with our customers is quota. So going all the way back to territories versus teams, there's kind of this like level of maturity as you scale and really where you see a lot of people start is on the team side. And the question I always ask is who owns the quota or the target? Is it the rep? Do you look at a rep and say, you rep are an enterprise account executive, therefore your quota is $1.2 million? Or do you look at it from a territory perspective and say, there is this much potential in this book of business or this territory that I've built, and thus the quota on the territory is going to be $1.1 million dollars, right? And in that case, when you think about the territory side of the house, the people assume that quota when they get assigned to the territory. So certainly we start from there. And I think majority of everything that we've seen has been very teams focused. Enterprise rep 1.2 million, adjust from there. There is, and we'll talk about this notion of setting a target against a territory and then pulling that through into teams so you kind of get a more accurate picture of who's responsible for what. But always think about that because that's the beginning point. Are you going to be in teams or are you going to be in territories or maybe both? Um, from there, you're going to want to build your targets. We used to, over a year ago, have one target type, tops down and bottoms up combined into one. We have since separated those two. And so you can now set a tops down target or a bottoms up target. What we mean by that typically is when you start at the top, it is a large number that you want to distribute throughout the organization all the way down to either a person or a rep level territory, right? Like the leaf nodes, common in the Fullcast terminology world. So that is just kind of pushing that number down through. Bottom up is the exact opposite. Go look at the reps and assign a quota to the reps and then roll those up through the hierarchy to get me to a top line number. Um, I think it's kind of a mix, right? In terms of how people think. Some people actually still do both. And we'll kind of talk about a scenario in which you could do both of those or where you would want to do both of those. Um, Majority, maybe I think, majority will start with bottoms up. And that's kind of just how you think about setting quota and wanting to roll that stuff up. And then finally, the target type, dynamic or static. Really, this is pertaining to this functionality called auto recalculation. So do you want this to be consistently updated based on other things that happen in the platform? Or do you really just want to plug in a number and kind of have it be set in stone? And we'll talk about some examples there. Right? We don't need to go into too much detail on that bottom line.
I think also one thing to caveat the slide with is that these are kind of general buckets of things to consider, but part of the strength of the platform is that there's actually probably like blended versions of all of these things. Like you mentioned, when it comes to territories versus teams, there's a way you could kind of integrate both. When we talk about top down and bottom up, there's a way that we can reference, a top down target and a bottom up target or something like that. So there's a lot of blending, but I wanted to kind of make it overly simplistic. So at least at the onset, we can have these three kind of things that we're trying to think about before we kind of dive into all these weeds of variations.
Yeah, I think the biggest one that you do want to make a decent decision on is the first one, which is that territories and teams. And that's actually one of the easier ones. You literally just ask yourself, like if you were an enterprise AE, do you have a specific quota that you get no matter what territory you get assigned? And if the answer is yes, you're going to be in teams. If you are trying to look into territory potential to inform a quota, then that's when you start to consider territories.
Like your account manager scenarios, those are examples we can talk about down the line. But it's been interesting to see how, according to role, for example, people think through that differently.
Correct. Yeah. All right. Uh, there we go. So before we begin, what do we need to put in place? Yeah, territories or teams. That would be helpful. Certainly, I think when we see a lot of people starting with territory planning, they've got this beautiful go-to-market structure built out with all your rules and everything there. And not so often are you touching the teams module, right? And you're building out your org structure. So if you decide to go down the teams path with targets, you'll want to build that out, get people into the appropriate teams, and kind of get that configured. If you're not doing team stuff and you're only going to be in territories and you're only going to set territory targets, then you don't need to worry about the teams thing. Number two is ramp profiles. Honestly, I think like you don't really absolutely need to have ramp profiles configured, but it kind of you lose the fidelity of when somebody is in a ramp period and you're wanting to see somebody's quota as it gets adjusted for ramp, then you're going to want to do it. So when, especially with like AE quota, like or any of the quotas out there, if you get hired in July, you're not responsible for any quota January through June. Or you kind of have this 0% in July, 25% in August, and so on and so forth, then you're going to want to reflect that in the quota because you're going to send this off to a commission tool. And so that's where the ramp profiles come in. I will show that briefly on how to set those up if you're not already doing that. But you could set targets without ramp profiles. Not ideal, but you could. Attainment metrics. So you will need a metric to set up a target. These metrics are looking at data to essentially say, how am I tracking against this target? So a very common one with AE quota would be bookings or ARR or closed won deals. And so you'll need to build that metric out and just tie that out with the target. You can always change these metrics out. So if you update a metric or you want to change it or switch it out, then you can do that mid-year. So certainly going back to, I just want to build something out. You can slap any kind of metric in there you want and change it out later so you can get a feeling for how targets is working. Um, and then the formula metrics. So as we think about like kind of the auto recalculation or some of this stuff from taking territory data to teams, you'll want to get those things set up. So we'll kind of talk a little bit about those. But really the core for me would be RAM profiles, attainment metrics, and then having teams built out if you're going to be doing it that. All right. Anything else to add with that, Ashley? Did I cover that okay?
Nope, you pass. Good
All
job.
right. Thank you. All right, good. Cool. Let's go into some of the scenarios. So we're gonna start with a territory potential target. This is actually a bottoms up for me. And so we'll actually go into Fullcast now and take a look at the territory potential target. So we've got some of these things built out. And oh wait, before I do this, I do want to show the ramp stuff, right? So ramp profiles, by the way, are under roles. And then you'll see these manage ramp profiles. You can really select any of these because they'll just take you anywhere you want. In this case, if I'm looking at the account executive role, I'll come in and edit this. And under AE, you will see the ramp profiles. We don't have anything built. So if I was to build one out, we would say, okay, this is a normal person. Normal coverage type in assignments is a person that's been hired. That's not temporary coverage. The other one that's new hire is actually that TBH that you'll sometimes assign out to territories. So you do like new hire, right? Start date can be the assignment start date or a field that you're bringing in from like an HRIS system or Salesforce that indicates the start date of the ramp. Um, the cutoff, when do you actually cut off ramp to be part of the next month? So if I select one, then anything after one means that your ramp will start in the following month. So a very classic example would be if I chose the 15th, then if you are hired March 14th, then your ramp will start in March. If you are hired March 25th, then your ramp will start in April. And then you would plug in your ramp profiles by defining out those months, right? So 0, 25, 50, 80, and the last month always has to be 100. So get those configured. We'll save that. And then we have our first ramp profile.
While you're
Yeah.
good question came in through chat. I don't know if the other people can see it or not. I'll read it out. Does ramp get pushed to any SFDC object, i.e., is it possible to report on ramps in SFDC reporting?
It is not. This is housed all in Fullcast. Um, and
Our
so yeah,
coverage reporting could do that, right?
yeah, you can pull the coverage report to get like to ramp and start dates and those things. But yeah, we don't push any of this data to Salesforce. Good question. So going back to this, one other thing, Ashley, that we didn't mention that is probably recommended is when you do your target configuration, there is a schedule profile. So you have multiple schedules in which, you want to take a target across the year and you're going to allocate it month over month, then you'll want to come in here and set this up. This helps with scale, so you're not having to like type in a number manually every single time. And when we get to this, you'll see these come in. But here's the EMEA schedule and kind of how we would percentage wise allocate across the 12 months. All right, targets. All right, so we were talking about our territory potential one. So if I scroll down, I've renamed that to AE quota. So under here, we've got our AE quota. It's a bottoms up target. When you create a new target, you'll come up over here in this right area. There's the top down and the bottom up. So if I was to actually create this from scratch, we would select bottom up. We'd give it a name, data type. Is it just a scalar? So a lot of scalar stuff, what that means is just point in time. What's my pipeline coverage? How many calls have I made? Those things times series, which is almost always quota, is going to be scheduled over the 12 months of a fiscal year. Split type. So split versus overlay. If you are somebody where you are assigned if two people of the same role are assigned the same target in a territory, then you will split that target between. So $1 million exists on a territory. Two AEs means maybe 50-50, 500 and 500. Overlay means just like everyone's responsible for the same target. A lot of times that's overlay roles. Um, so when we think about AE stuff, split metric, this is the attainment piece. So you pick one, whatever it is. Assigned roles. This is really critical for ramp, right? So when you assign people to territories, you have to select that ramp profile that we set up. And then when you build the target, you're saying, okay, well, go look at the people that have been assigned to the account executive role and pull their ramp in when I add a ramp profile. You could add multiple roles. So this is also an order of precedence. So if there were two people with the same target, and they're assigned at, the different roles, then we would pull the first one, which would be AE. All right. And then
Commonly, you're going to see something like AE and maybe a manager, though, right? I think.
yeah, usually it would be like AE and the sales manager, then senior vice president, and then CRO. Because these are existing at different levels of your hierarchy. And so there's not overlap per se on the actual ramp and assignment there. And then you'll pick out your fiscal year. And then the bottom section allows you, because bottoms up will create a target at every single leaf node. And so this allows you to exclude nodes from actually getting any target at all. We by default have plugged in the unassigned nodes to be excluded. Typically, you're not signing targets to unassigned nodes. So we've just said, okay, we'll do that, but you can go in and, add as many things as you want. Maybe you only want to assign this target to EMEA territories or specific roles or those types of things. And so you can kind of filter that out. Um, some other things we'll just touch on today. We're not going to go into the details of target minimums, but this is something that's kind of rolling out right now, where you want to just set a reportable target minimum. A lot of times, especially in the later half of the year, you want to manage the commission rate that's actually being paid out against a target. And so when you are on ramp and you're hired in the later half of the year and you have a much smaller quota because of the ramp, the base commission rates can skyrocket. And so through our target minimum, you can calculate out what that minimum should be and then visualize that against the actual target that that person's getting assigned. And so we'll have flags and stuff to say, okay, hey, this quota is not meeting the target minimum. You might want to make an adjustment. And then there's auto recalculate, which will come up in later in this call. All right, we're not going to continue from here, but that's kind of the general configuration of this. Then you'll set a goal and a schedule. We've done that in here, and we'll just go into the target details. So you can set and I've rolled this up, but if you were to like set this from wanting to look at like potential in a territory, then you would look at your metrics. Maybe there's the sum of bookings potential that you drag out, in which case it will calculate the territory potential. If you were going to apply this in thinking about bottoms up, you're not really going to start at all companies. You might actually would apply this at all leaf node targets or at all person level targets. And this kind of goes into this bulk edit mode. This is a new thing that we worked on last year. And so if I open this up, right, we can now see that I'm going to apply this target or this formula to all of these 10 territories or these 6 growth territories. Same thing with the schedule. If I wanted to apply a specific schedule to only enterprise or to growth, I can do that through here. This is where the schedule templates come into play. So you see that EMEA schedule template, APAC, AMER, everything we built earlier is also available. Ramp profiles and adjustments, also we'll talk about in a bit, but those you can add here if you wanted to pull in the ramp now. Typically, I would just set it so I can get a sense of where the baseline is. And so you would apply that stuff. So in this case, we'll leave here. And then I want to go back all the way down into AMER growth 1.
One
So
second before you go there, just as a if anybody is on the call and they're like, oh, I just want to go play around with this. Two things that come up often is if you're going to create a net new target, whether it's in territories or in teams, always do the actual creation of the target at the all companies level. And then if it only applies to leaf nodes in that multi-select that Tyler was showing, that's where you can go and select which nodes you want to apply it to. That's really just for visibility's sake. If you originate or create a target at a lower level node, it only shows up when you select that node versus if we create everything at all teams or at all companies, we're always going to see every single target that exists on that top page, as it were. And there was one other thing that now I can't remember.
Well, you can always interrupt me. That is definitely one thing that happens in teams because you're typically, oh, here's an AE quota or here's the SE quota, right? And the SE quota is not going to be assigned to your AE team. And so you'll want to at least see all your targets at all teams. And so as you distribute those down, you will just say, okay, sales engineer quota, don't assign it out to anything else other than maybe a mayor SE, right? And so those are things that you'll just want to think about when you kind of either set this bottoms up or even tops down when you do the distribution. All right. So back over to here. We built our AE quota. I'm on growth 1. We've got this at 1.1. It's looking at, the data that exists here. We also have auto recalculate enabled. So if anything changes with growth, like an account got moved from one territory to another that would impact this target, it would recalculate the target to reflect an updated value. So that is one scenario. And I think that goes back to where we've really are thinking about how do we take target setting and parallelize it to, that's a tough one, with territory planning, right? It's been for a long time, I always see territory planning, and quota setting just waits until the end. And they're the ones that get crunched to deliver quota in a very tight time frame. And what we're trying to do is how do we kind of allow that to happen at the same time? And the way that that would come to fruition is really through this auto recalculate. I can build my base structure the foundation in place today while territories are still being built and turn on auto recalculate so the territory team can continue to do what it needs to do. And when I go in to look at quotas, I'm constantly getting the most up-to-date information on, books of business and how they change and those types of things. So then when it really does come time to, great, territories are done and I need a lock quota, it's just that last mile and it's not the let's go figure everything out. So that's really important for us and why we have that and built that. Now we've taken this AE quota a little bit further in the sense that we've kind of like built this out, but this is built in territories. And we kind of teased out the territories to teams piece. So this is, as you start to think about, I feel really good about my territory potential numbers. And I want to essentially build a baseline target off of books of business. Then you would do exactly what we just showed with bookings potential, or maybe you've got some fancy formula to calculate out what the territory target should be, right? And then you've gone through, I'm going to go back to territories real quick because I want to paint this picture. Then you've got Lauren, who is our account executive and is assigned to growth one. So we've been able to map the target, the AE quota target, to Lauren and the growth one territory all into one. And when you come into now teams and you're wanting to set a target for Lauren, see if we can find Lauren in here. There's Lauren. So if you were setting a target for Lauren, and then we're really big. We'll scroll there. See, now I lose Lauren here. Um, so there we go. I just want to edit Lauren. So in this case, we can get rid of this and we'll pull in that territory target, which we'll call a quota. And essentially, this is Lauren's target from territories. It might be really large because Lauren is actually assigned. I've tried to audit this before this, but Lauren is assigned to multiple territories. So it's not just that single growth one that we were seeing, but essentially pulling the quota over. So if Lauren is assigned to multiple territories, maybe 3 or 4, we're adding all of that together to give us a number for Lauren,
We've
right?
got the target on the territories. We got the person assigned coverage to the territory. When we shuttle that over to teams, we're just aggregating those things together. I feel
Correct.
like this is like that's a big number, and I think that's a data thing in our system, but it's also like there are cases I think where you have people who may be assigned to multiple territories, or you may have your segmentation such that like one BDR is on 6 territories, and it's best for you to set your territories up that way versus like having multiple plans. And there you have it. It's bringing it all together.
Yep. And so now Lauren will have one quota, which is a culmination of all the territories that they've been assigned to with any kind of scheduling. And then if you wanted to add ramp and stuff at this level, you can. All right. And we'll just change this to quarterly so it's not so crazy. That's much better. So that's kind of the territory to teams functionality that we kind of rolled out last year. If you're not setting anything in territories and you're just doing things in teams, then you would just do the bottoms up target setting in teams, right? So you'd come in, you'd get out of AE quota 2, go to bottoms up, build out your quotas, set that target based on, you're an enterprise rep, mid-market rep, L2 rep, whatever that might be, and you just build it here and you don't need to reference the territories. Okay. So going back to our deck here. So we've kind of talked about AE quota stuff. Then the next layer of this is really overlays. So on the SE side of the house, but this could be BDRs, this could be really anything looking at other targets. So we can now take this and go, let's extend this further into other roles, but I don't want to rebuild things completely from scratch. So in this case, we've got an overlay target SE that we've built. We've also turned on auto recalculate. And so we go into here. What this is going to be doing, the way we've set this up is say, go look at the territory potential target, which was our AE target, and then multiply that by 78%. I made this part up, but essentially it gives me a number, right? And so this is now looking at the AE quota, and anytime that the AE quota changes, then this target will recalculate to keep that up to date. And so now we're starting to scaffold this stuff for other roles. Um, so then you really become the center point around here is a territory potential or an AE quota target that all these other overlays are looking at, and we want to continually keep everything up to date. So you're never wondering like, did I actually update that or not? It's just built on all these different formulas that look at each other. So we've built out that SE overlay target. We'll go in, escape out of this, and go back. And now we've got that scaffolded. The next piece for us is to start to think about AMs, account managers, or CSMs, or whatever the terminology is. But a lot of times their targets might be a mix of two things. One, expansion, and the other one, renewal, right? Um, and so you could build those separate targets out to look at the data that exists within the territory they've been assigned. Or if you're doing this in teams, it would be through what has already been assigned to them, right? So the teams stuff is really looking through the opportunity ownership, whereas the territory side of the house is looking at the account. So opportunity to account. And this is really beneficial when you set targets when you do it in territories, because then you've got the logic of, well, if you get assigned to this territory or this book, then this is going to be your renewal target because this is what's going to renew before you actually even assign anything out. So the renewal target in this case, we've built out with a formula, surprise, surprise, open pipeline for this fiscal year. And then we've also in our schedule, rather than using a templated schedule, or keeping it flat, we said go look at what the close dates are of this pipeline and kind of schedule this out. So in the data here, this is just saying like this is when this target is come due. It looks like this person has a massive deal coming up in December of 26, or a couple of them. But this would be the renewal target, and we've kind of scheduled that out based on when those things are expected to close. From there, we then went in and built out our expansion target, right? So expansion can be any formula you want. I think we just experimented with what's the potential of growth one, subtract out the renewal target because it's customers, and then multiply by 0.01. So that gave me a number. And essentially that plus the renewal target will give us what the AE quota or AM quota will be. And what we did there, and we'll leave this, is finally come back into our AM quota. And then I just said, okay, bring those two together. And then for the schedule, what we've used is the new preserve monthly values. So when you add targets together now, one of the things that was happening is we would add these together, you'd get a number, and then you would have to apply a schedule. So let's say I apply the EMEA schedule out. Well, this has nothing to do with when the renewals are due. This is just a flat schedule, not flat, but just a schedule that's been preset. It's not actually looking at, what the data is in growth one. And we kind of have already done that within our renewal target and the expansion target. So we now have a preserve monthly values schedule, and all that does is it adds up the monthly numbers from the targets you're referencing. You will only see this when we're referencing targets. You won't see this, for example, as soon as I get rid of it, it removes it. If I type in a number, preserve monthly values doesn't exist because there's no target that we're trying to pull a schedule from, and you would just use your normal thing.
I think this is probably clear to everybody, but it's actually the question. So essentially, we're just taking like target one broken down by month, target two broken down by month, whatever our math was, right? And we're just stacking these and summing them and allocating across the month. Okay.
Yeah. A big example of this was we had a customer that had a variable target that was independent of ramp. So your variable target every month was the same, or it would change based on whatever schedule they put. But there was no ramp applied. So when you started in your position, you were responsible from day one for this variable target in the full bit. Then you would have another part of your target or your quota, which would be something that has ramp applied. 0, 20, 50, whatever the ramp schedule is. And so then what we were doing is we were adding them together because you want to give a singular number to the rep or the commissions tool and how you kind of calculate that out. But we were adding that at the annual level and then rescheduling everything, which doesn't make any sense because then it's not actually paying attention to the core variable target that you originally had. And so then you start adding those up and you actually get an accurate goal for each month, rather than kind of rescheduling it all back out. Okay, so we've built our AM target now, and we can that kind of looks at these other targets. And again, the recalculate piece is all here. So recalculate is really important in the sense that any target that changes. So if a referenced target changes, we'll recalculate a target. If you change data on the left in the territories, we'll recalculate the target. An import job runs. And when it finishes, if data changes, then we'll recalculate the target. So there's a bunch of scenarios we're listening for to kind of continually recalculate the targets to kind of keep them up to date. And really everything here after we've been done has been built to either recalculate and look at data that is coming from the territory plan or is looking at other targets. So the only thing I actually need to get involved in and make changes to would be the AE target, right? That's actually in the team side now that I'm actually talking about it because this AE target is actually looking at territory potential. So if I was to leave this exactly as is, I wouldn't need to touch this at all until day one when I'm ready to roll this stuff out. Maybe managers want to make adjustments and things like that, and you can certainly set that up from there. Okay. So I think we've covered most of our scenarios except for the finance one. We're going to go through that. So we did talk through the territory potential target. Go look at bookings potential or TAM or anything like that. Build a quota. You can do that typically is bottoms up. You could do it tops down, but I prefer to do that from a bottom up allocation. For me, we've talked about how SE overlays, you can look at an AE quota, you could look at other plays like other targets that have been set. AE or AM, renewal and expansion targets kind of getting added up and scaffolded. And then finally here we've got the finance top down. And with a customer had called this forced distribution, so we're calling it forced distribution. So what is forced distribution? All right. So we're in teams, and I've got an AE quota built here, right? And so this AE quota is been allocated in different. Actually, I think we'll look at this now. So we'll go into here. So we have a finance target that finance has given us a number. And essentially we've said, okay, well, let's go and distribute that down. And we'll go up to here and back up. So this is why you do things from all teams. And then, or did it? I'm going up to all companies. Ah, here it is. This is
That's
one.
the other thing. Like, it's probably obvious to people, but when you're in the weeds of doing this and you're working and you start going fast because you're excited and then you forget where you are between territories and teams, it's always something to kind of take pause and it's easy to kind of get yourself switched up.
All right. And some of this stuff I changed up last minute just to tie the scenarios out a little bit more. So we had really originally had some of the in the team stuff with this finance top down, but I really wanted to kind of demonstrate this from a territory perspective. So we have a new company goal, right? And maybe I build bottoms up my AE quota. Well, rolled all the way up, I'm at 138 million. And maybe late in the game, finance or the company comes in or the board comes in and says, you know what, no, that number is going to be 156. So you need to figure out how to kind of go redistribute that out. Uh, one way to do that, I'm not saying that this is the way to do it, but one way to do that is to just take that surplus or the difference between 156 and 138 and distribute that out evenly across all of the different territories or reps. And so that's kind of where this forced distribution comes in. So we've got our new company goal, and we will distribute this down. So in our new distribution logic, we've got a bunch of different options. We can, by default, not distribute it. We can do it by a ratio on a field. So looking at fields or metrics or data equally, we'll select it so you can see what this looks like. A specific value, I just want to plug things in manually. And then there's the forced distribution. So when this comes up, it's asking me, well, how far down do you want to go? And I actually want to do this on all descendant nodes. We're excluding unassigned by default. You can get rid of that if you'd like. You can also add additional targets or territories. And then finally, you'll pick a target. Go look at another target to determine what the ratio of the distribution needs to be. So in this case, I've got my bottoms up AE quota that's been built out. And so this is essentially taking that 156 and looking at the AE quota and saying, you know what, in the AE quota, almost 80% of that AE quota is allocated to a mare. So I will take 80% of the 156 and give that to a mare. And essentially you're taking that surplus and based on the ratios and the distribution of it, kind of pushing that down through the org. And so if I open up APAC, ANZ, India, all of these different subregions had no target assigned in AE quota land. The only one that did was Korea. And so now we can see how this is looking at that other target and thus distributing that stuff out. And we can go all the way down and look at all these different targets, and we've got everything allocated out. And so we could just update this target, it would distribute it, and we just do that right now. And so it'll get all that distribution done, give it out to the reps. And this is essentially a way to get to a point where, everybody's happy. Maybe not the reps because they're getting extra quota without really us saying, hey, you're getting more potential in the territory, but you've now reallocated out the quota across the company in kind of this ratio or even spread, if you will. So that's that new force distribution logic we've built out. Okay, so that covers our 5 main scenarios. We'll move really, really fast because I was worried about time. So really what happens next after you build your targets? You would typically export those out to a comp tool, or if you're using Fullcast Pay, these are fully integrated into each other. So when you build out your crediting rule and your comp plans, you'll point to those targets to essentially say, go look at this target, go look at this for attainment, and this is how you're going to pay all this stuff out. A lot of times what we do on the export to another comp tool, we would just kind of figure out, okay, well, what does that structure need to look like for the compensation tool to essentially bring that in? And we work with you to build a CSV or multiple CSVs and send those out via to like an S3 bucket or a GCP or things like that that then an ETL tool can pick up. We've seen many, many different scenarios and how that data needs to look. So we haven't really standardized it on our side yet. Maybe someday we will do that. But as of now, that's kind of how we are exporting out. And of course, the recommended thing would be to just do Fullcast Pay because everything is fully integrated and we don't even need to worry about any of that. Cool. So we have some upcoming stuff, but before we do that, I think, was there any additional questions with the target setting? And anything else that we want to like go deeper in on and look at?
We'll pause here for a second. Gonna ask something, but I don't remember. Just
I mean, while we're waiting for questions, there are, besides the target minimums, there are there's one other thing on the horizon for us. we're kind of or we're really adding a new view. So this has been the view that's been available for us for quite some time. This is going to be called the summary view, and we're adding what we're uh, coining is the detail view. And essentially, it goes away and removes everything that you see, and all you see is targets. So it will be a one massive spreadsheet looking style view to view all your targets at once. That's been a top request, especially when you're having 800 plus reps that you have to look at quota for. So as you kind of like wanted to unpack and validate things and look at that stuff, that is one thing that's up and coming. That should be in prod in the next week or so. Um, and we're continuing to work on targets. So things like proposed targets, exposing more of the ramp stuff in Teams, adding in some of the workflows in Teams as well. So we're really seeing as customers expand through into commissions and teams and targets and these different tools, we're needing to keep our workflows and stuff up to date, and we just need to extend some of those scenarios to catch all of the different things there. So lots to come on the target side. We're going to continue investing on that on the product. And so feedback is super important as you kind of get started in this and things that you get stuck on. And those things are all things that I want to hear. So did we get any
Question.
questions?
Yeah, two questions, two questions. The first one is, how does auto recalculate work with team targets that are based on territory targets?
Same thing. It would if I build a team target and turn on auto recalculate and it's looking at a territory target. If the territory target updates, it will auto recalculate. Another thing with this team, like the territory to team stuff, is it's looking at the assignments, right? So if an assignment gets updated, maybe somebody gets removed from a territory and put on another territory, that will also trigger an auto recalculation of the target. Uh, we're going to continue to work on this in terms of exposing the scenarios that you choose to enable, right? I want you to run similar to auto rerun rules, where I want you to run the recalculation on when the target meets these scenarios. So to give you a little more control over that. There's also kind of a proposal mechanism that we're going to work on. Right now, my stance is once you go business as usual, so you've finalized your targets, you're now in year, turn off auto recalculate because right now what will happen is it'll just start changing targets. Um, so we're working on proposal mechanisms to essentially say this happened, we're proposing a change, and thus do you want to essentially commit it and make it permanent, or no, I don't. Let's throw the proposal away and keep the target as is. So those are some of the things that we're working through on the auto recalculate. But yes, that scenario of dealing with when a territory target changes or assignments change, and I want a referenced team target or the team target that references those to be updated, it will recalculate.
What about, I'm afraid I'm gonna open Pandora's box here. Like historical value preservation. Like if I'm auto recalculate changes and it's, we're already 5 months into the year, I'm seeing auto recalculate only impact the remainder of time that hasn't happened yet, right? Or does it depend?
Well, and that's exactly the piece that we are extending.
Ah, okay.
Day, it would full on recalculate, and it would recalculate even if you're midway through the year, it would recalculate all of the values.
Okay.
So what Ashley's talking about, right, is like if I am looking at a quota, and this is massive, but if I was looking at this quota and we recalculate it, let's say we're in Q3, Q1 and Q2 have already passed. But if I trigger an auto recalculation, it will change Q1 and Q2 numbers today, which is why I say go turn it off when you go into business as usual. What we are working towards is extending that auto recalculation to be able to take advantage of while we're in Q3, so only make that change Q3 moving forward. Today, if you do make those changes, like in our recalculation, if you were to do it manually, so if I was to set here, If I hit update target, it would recalculate all 4 quarters. I can make that effective as of June, right? And so when I do that, then what that's saying is only recalculate the data June moving forward and don't look at February through May. Leave those as is. And that's just something we've got to continue to do for the auto recalculation stuff. Not there yet.
Great. Another question here. Tyler, what's your favorite part of the quota framework that to get customers to use this that maybe they might miss? Or is there like I think the question here is what's your favorite thing that it can do that people might kind of skip over or gloss over that you think is really powerful and fun and exciting? This is my interpretation of this question. um,
This is so hard because a lot of what's changed is all my fault. And so
you like it all, all your
uh
favorite.
I think it's all like I get very excited about this stuff because I've been working with customers for 8 years. And the older version and moving into product kind of this has been the imprint that I've had on Fullcast. And really it's like this I think okay, if I have to pick one thing, it's the bulk editing piece of targets. And for those of you that remember in if you've ever used the version 1 of targets, you had to go through this process of building a new target and it had to be tops down. So you would start at the very top and distribute all the way down. Distribute. Even if you didn't even wanted to do distribute tops down, you had to do it all the way down, only then to apply a bottoms up target. And then it was really difficult to do it in segments. So what I mean by that is a lot of times um, you have a lot of times, every time you have a different quota for enterprise and growth, or a different schedule for a mayor versus APAC. And in the old world, you had to do that one by one. Every target you had to go through and then roll that stuff up. And in the new world with editing targets, you can just go in and say, I want you to apply this goal to, we'll uncheck that. I can do it to all of my person targets. I could use custom criteria. Your role is this, so apply it to that. Or I can just like go in and, check the box a couple times for these people, right? And enable that. If I wanted to apply the schedule of that, I could, and then save. And I'm done. And then I can roll that up and we're good. That didn't used to exist, and you would have to go each of those people one by one and edit their targets. So that's probably my most favorite feature because it is one with bottoms up targets being separated out. We get to skip the tops down, go straight to bottoms up. And then in the bulk edit functionality, we can apply those changes at scale. And so it sets up targets to move really, really fast when you're kind of building these things out for the first time and you're needing to make big changes and big updates to a single target.
I think
There,
another overlooked thing too, or maybe like people who are in here appreciate it. I cut you off before the end of your sentence. The like being able to import or upload your targets, I think is a nice springboard to this. People really like, like, oh, I've already got my spreadsheet. And as you're making a transition into from your spreadsheet world to this world, being able to do that, I think has really jump-started things for people and helps them ease into managing things out of the platform, from what they've been used to in a spreadsheet.
yeah, that's a big one. I totally forgot about. We did import and export. So you can export all of these targets to a CSV. You could go make changes in the CSV and then just re-import them. And so that's been a huge one for a lot of customers that have many different stakeholders that they need to get involved that may not be in Fullcast and doing territory or quota planning in Fullcast.
Matching that process.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. I'm trying to look and see if there's any other questions. I hope that was the question and we interpreted it correctly and that's a good answer. But if not, let us know. I see we're right up on time. So really quickly, I'll go over these upcoming sessions. So It is June, yeah. So next month is June. We're going to be talking about territory-based lead and account routing. So I was really excited to talk about this. I don't think we've talked about it in an office hours session unless it was like several years ago. So this will be a good one. And then for the Copy AI product, we are going to be talking about a nice feature over there called tables, which allows you to do a lot of scalable stuff, to be precise. So that's it. Anything else for you, Tyler? Parting words?
No, I mean, their targets is so broad and there's so much to cover. And I ran through a bunch of scenarios to just kind of get the juices flowing, right? And we have a bunch of amazing people on our CX team that do this day in and day out that you can reach out to and leverage to figure out, well, great, Tyler threw a lot at me in 45 minutes, but where do I really actually start? And I think that that's where your CX and your CSM and implementation people can really help you get started with that first one. And I think once you get the first one done, it clicks. And the way I always say it's like building blocks and you're stacking things and using formulas, and that's really how it's designed. We're really trying to avoid as much of the manual work as possible. So um, that's that. I'm excited to hear how everything goes for all of you and in your target implementations and any of the feedback that ensues. So that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone. We'll send the recording out tomorrow and see you next month.
Cool. See ya.
Bye.